organization which will stand for empowerment of women. And as we help in grassroots level and creating opportunities and jobs.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Chairperson Uma Chigurupati and her committee, I, Radhika Agarwal, Honorary Secretary Flow, extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, respected past chairs, members, old and new, to Flow Hyderabad's learning module, Net Worth to Life Worth, with Mr. Rajiv Bajaj from Bajaj Capital. A life infused with meaning and purpose is a life well lived. Rightly said by our eminent speaker, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, what truly matters is not how long you have lived, but how well you have lived and what you have done to find the meaning in the things that make your life worthwhile. Today's session will help you to go on a journey of true passion and a path of meaningful living by discovering the life purpose and leverage our unique gifts to achieve professional and personal success. It is a talk about Ikigai of money, striking a balance between mind, body, soul, and money matters. Before that, let's start the session by paying homage to our motherland, by salutation to our national flag. Now, I would like to invite Chairperson Uma Chigurupati to give her welcome address.
Thank you, Radhika. A very good afternoon. Welcome to Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, who's our guest speaker today, and in a short while, taking us through net worth to life worth. My warm welcome to past chairs, GB members, and all the guests attending the session today. It is not about having money. It is knowing how to manage it. Financial planning incorporates both art and science. As an art, it involves creativity, customization, and individuals' behavioral relationship with money. All of this can evolve with time. Adapting to that is a science. Knowing or studying finance can prepare a person not only managing finances, but also for tasks in everyday life, because finance revolves around planning and analysis. Ikigai, a Japanese word, means reason for being. Knowing your Ikigai is understanding your purpose of life, which brings joy and inspires you get out of bed every day. Before inviting Mr. Rajiv to take over the session, let me give a brief introduction of him. Mr. Rajiv Bajaj is the Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj Capital, a company founded by his father, Mr. K.K. Bajaj, in the year 1965. He is also the founding chairman of Financial Planning Standards Board India and has been one of the key people involved with bringing the globally recognized Certified Financial Planner professional mark to India. He has over 30 years of strategic management experience in the fields of investment banking, investment advisory, insurance brokerage, and financial planning. He spent initial years of his career in setting up of the investment banking business for Bajaj Capital. He also played an important role in expanding the distribution reach of Bajaj Capital from 20 offices in 1990 to around 230 now. Rajiv is committed to institutionalization and the highest standards of corporate governance and is working with a best-in-class board and empowering professional managers to grow the company. That's his current quest. Rajiv has also founded OmniLife, which is a wellness platform that offers ancient wisdom-based solutions to a life of total well-being with complete alignment of mind, body, and soul. Rajiv has done his MBA from University of Geneva, Switzerland, and an executive MBA from Carnegie Mellon University, USA. He holds an international certificate for financial advisors from the Chartered Insurance Institute, London. An active speaker and writer on investment strategy and financial planning in leading print and electronic media, and is extremely passionate about spreading financial literacy among the masses. Rajiv is a fitness enthusiast and is very passionate about Qigong. Over to you, Rajiv. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Hi, a very warm thanks for inviting me today. Thank you, Uma. Thank you, Pooja, for being my introduction points to FICCI Flow Hyderabad. And I'll start with my apologies due to a personal exigency. I had to cancel once. I'm a person who likes to keep commitments. So I felt very bad about it. So I've, as a makeup, I worked extra hard on this topic. So this morning I sat in my bed and I called for my tea and toast in bed only. And I started working on the speech. Normally I don't prepare speeches, but I thought this group, deserves me to apply my mind afresh.
Thank you.
And what I'm sharing with you today is a first time ever. This is the first time ever I am, speaking, and this is a topic which between Pooja and Uma and myself, we kind of, played just a round robin, and we decided that we came up with this topic. So life net worth to life worth is something, I weave together, and possibly is a story of my life. So what I'm actually sharing with you, my own thought process is very simplistic. I don't really believe in jargons and complex word TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, because I used to get drowned in it. I'm not a mathematics major or a finance major, but I'm in a finance business. So whenever these words used to be thrown on me, I used to feel like in cricket terms, bouncers coming at me. And initially I used to be intimidated, but later I realized that people are just ratifying certain words, and they are trying to impress you with their knowledge. So whichever industry, engineering, science, finance you go to, there are those 100 TLAs which people memorize, and they keep using them again and again, and it makes us sound very intelligent. So my aim is to eliminate these acronyms from our life and make things very, very simple. Life, as we know, all of us, we want to live our lives very, very simply. So with these words of introduction and setting the expectation, I'm going to go into my presentation. And I just want a confirmation. Can you see the screen? Lovely, lovely, lovely. Wonderful. Great. So as the topic we know is net worth to life worth, and I'm sharing with you my own story, and it's been a very, very interesting journey for me to come from the world of financial services, which is still my bread and butter. But the jam and cherry on top is now the health and wellness, and now my family has grown literally and virtually. My boys are 25 and 23 respectively. So one of my sons, Jay, the older one, is involved with me in building the retirement business of Bajaj Capital, and Shivam, the younger one, is involved in building the health and wellness platform which Uma spoke of, OmniLife. And we are, as a family, invested. We have invested ourselves into this. So it's like we are all in. We are all in this together. So let me start this journey by sharing with you, how it all started. It was way back in 1990. I walked into, it was 42 degrees May, Delhi heat, as you know, very, very dry heat. I walked in Connaught Place. I walked into my father's office, and I said, Dad, can you give me a job? And I didn't have a CV. And I was, many of us are privileged. And I was one of those privileged ones with the silver spoon that to ask for a job and to get a job without a CV. And that, has continued to haunt me, I tell you, all my life. To be able to, it's a privilege, but it is also, if you're a self, conscientious person, then it also kind of comes back to haunt you time and again. And I'll build on that, as we go along, and my own journey of my ikigai from financial services to ikigai. And we all have these labels we apply on our forehead. So for the longest time, I had this label on my forehead that I'm a financial services guy. So it was as if it's printed on my forehead. I'm a scientist. I'm a engineer. I'm a doctor. I'm a financial services professional. So we find it hard to peel off these layers of our forehead, and it's a journey, and took me almost 10 years to kind of go through a self-realization that I'm ready for this sort of I can lead this dual life, and which is in harmony and which is not at conflict with each other. So here is this picture of me in 2017 March. I am at Shaolin Temple in China. This is where it was clicked. We were a group of 12 entrepreneurs from EO who got together and made this trip. I would say it's one of the when I'm on my deathbed and I'm my reel of my life is running through my head, this is one of the moments, this is one of the weeks I will remember from my life, and hence it's very important to me. I thought, let's put it up in the presentation and share it with you. So I'll tell you about my first business idea. And I honestly, today morning, as I said, over a cup of tea, hot cup of chai in beautiful Delhi November weather, it came back to me. Our lifeline determines what we are. And if, once in a while, it's good to keep going back to, they say stay in the moment. But it's also once in a while in a systematic, constructive way to go back to your past as a tool for understanding yourself better, because your past also determines your future. So I thought of, when did I thought of this, my first business idea I had generated, and my father has archived that. I had written it on a piece of paper. When I was 9 years old and my brother was 7, we came up with this idea. I said, Dad, I have an idea. Why don't we buy a Fanta for 2 rupees and we freeze it? We create these, casks, and we put it, freeze it, and we will sell 5 ice lollies and sell them for 1 rupee each, and we'll double our money by doing that. And Dad said, very good idea. And my brother said, oh, this is rubbish. Why? He was 7 at that time. He says, why don't we set up a printing press and we print 100 rupee notes in it? It will be much faster. So it was a very funny moment. And both these ideas are actually incorporated in my philosophy of or principles of wealth management. I work on personally and for my clients on certain basic principles of wealth management, and both mine and my brother's principles are incorporated in it, as I'll share with you in future slides. My thought was business has to be built brick by brick. So this is how I think. What I was thinking at age 9, today I'm 51. My thinking hasn't changed. So my past determines my present and my future. So let me give you an example. My mindset is every business we do, it has to be sustainable. It has to be an annuitized business. It has to give you sustainable income. So for example, we're in the business of wealth management, and so products we use are mutual funds, life insurance, health insurance, and such. And all these business have repeat income value. So for example, if somebody tells me, and that way I lost interest in investment banking, because in investment banking, you make money in a deal once, you chase it, for a year, and you do the deal, but that's it. That's a one-time thing. Whereas in mutual funds, if you have invested 1 crore of rupees through us, we will get 1% income of that year on year till you keep the money. So if you keep the money for let's say next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and I'll build on this thought, then our relationship continues. I continue to serve you, and we continue to earn money. So my thought is, let's build each business brick by brick, and it has to be continuous, it has to be sustainable, it has to be relationship based. So this was my own lesson. We also incorporated my brother's lesson. So let me clarify that we haven't put up a money printing press, but what we've done is that we used his idea of letting money make money on itself. And that was the second lesson of wealth management, which is the principle of power of compounding, and which I'll demonstrate to you in the next slide. Understanding power of compounding is what Albert Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world. So as we know, 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 4 is 8, and then 16. And so if you keep doubling your, in a certain period of time, your 4 rupees will become 8 rupees. If you double, let's say every 5 years, in every 5 years, your 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, and 32 becomes 64. So if you were over a 25-year period, you can increase your money. You buy 30x. And that is the, money on money. Money makes money on itself. It gallops at that rate. And I would say, if you have to retain only one thing from my presentation, it would be this, that the longer you leave your money in your investment avenue, whatever it is, more money it will make for you. So how do you train yourself on a mindset of investing regularly, investing continuously, staying committed, not letting your emotions or your principles or anything else sway it? So that is, I would say, my biggest learning in this field, and it came from my brother's, thinking at the age of 7. Second is, I'm sure many of you have heard of Rule of 72. Has anybody heard? If I can ask Pooja, have you heard of Rule of 72?
No, Rajiv.
So Pooja, if you want to, if you're just sitting idle one day for a coffee and you want to compute that in how much time I'm putting bank, SBI is giving me 6% rate of interest. So in how much time will my money double? So you apply rule of 72. So what you do is 72 divided by the rate of interest you are getting on that investment or return you're getting on that investment. So if, let me ask you, if SBI is giving you 6%, 72 divided by 6, in how many years will your money double?
Rajiv, if it helps, I flunked and I'm really bad at.
No, you have to answer, Pooja.
Don't do this to me.
72
Ask someone else.
divided by 6.
12.
12.
12. Thank you.
Yes, 12. So in 12 years, your money will double. So rule of 72 as a thumb rule, it helps you calculate in how much time your money doubles. So you have to always be thinking this particular investment. So if somebody says, I have this very good investment avenue for you, and it's giving 18% return. Now 18% is very high return. So 72 divided by 18. Pooja, I won't leave you. 72 divided by 18. In how many years your money will double?
I have no
Oh
clue.
God.
4
years.
4, ma'am. 4, yes. So Gunjan is right. 4. In 4 years, your money will double. So it's very tempting. That means your money, if you keep getting 18% return on your money year after year after year, every 4 years, you can potentially double your money. And if you do that 40 times, you know how many times your money will become is the lesson. So this is the first principle which all of you should be aware of. Third lesson, this is a Panchtantra, typical Panchtantra lesson, which our kids also know, and we all read as kids these Panchtantra stories, which is that don't put all your eggs in one basket and create a portfolio. So there are, several investment avenues. The broader classes, as we call them, are shares, fixed deposits, bonds, gold, real estate, cash, art. So whatever we believe in, we do not put all our money in one place, come what may. This is like a guru mantra. And how many times I have said, I've had my friends coming back to me and telling me, Rajiv, मारे गए, ये हो गया, क्या हो गया, सारा पैसा excite होके, एक company में लगा दिया. So, that is not the way to do things. And the last thing you do is, at a cocktail party, somebody tells you that buy this thing. So I got, caught once. I was standing at a bar 10 years ago at a party, and this acquaintance comes up to me and says, और बताइए क्या चल रहा है, कोई tip बताइए. So I said, I don't do tips, I don't believe in that. But we started chatting, and I said, DLF has just got listed, and it's a good company, good share, and all, go and should do well over long term. So that's where we finished the conversation. 2 years later, or 2-3 years later, I met this person again at a party. So he comes up to me. He was looking a little stiff in his body language. So I said, "Kya hua? What really happened? Why are you so stiff with me?" He says, "Yaar, tumne to marwa diya." I said, "What did I do?" On your recommendation, I invested in DLF, and DLF stock has gone down. So you gave me a wrong advice. So that is kind of that became a lesson for me, that whenever anybody wants to discuss markets with me over a cocktail, I say I would put a rider first. The last thing you should do, whether it is me or anyone else, ask for any advice or take any advice from anyone over a cocktail party. And that's how, since we deal with over 10,000 high net worth families in India, I know from experience, many of our high net worth customers, they exchange ideas, at get-togethers, at weddings, at functions, and that's when they come and apply it. That's the I would say the worst place to be doing that. So, but I would say we could go right or wrong, but an important principle here is we should be clear. However good an investment is, whether DLF share would have worked or not, it's a different thing. But do not put everything in it. These days we are watching these cricket matches and cryptocurrency ads are coming. So I don't have, my knowledge about crypto is zero. So I asked my son, he's better informed, because they have, kind of done a little bit of crypto while they were studying in US. And I said, what do you think? Should we add it to Bajaj Capital's portfolio of services? So he thought about it and he says, no, Dad, we shouldn't do it, because at some point, all these cryptocurrencies will be regulated. So, the moment the countries recognize them, their prices will crash. Because right now, why cryptos are thriving? Because they are outside the mainstream system. And people are able to buy and sell products and commodities, some of them not very famous ones, through crypto. They are able to do things which they are not able to do with regulated money. And hence, the use of crypto, the base premise of crypto would be compromised. So my humble input to you ladies would be, no investment is good enough that you put all of your life's nest into it. So this is lesson number 3. I will go on in my journey, and I'd say this was a breakthrough moment in my life. So I started in the heat of Connaught Place, May 1990s, when I took a job from my dad. I designed my own training program. I ran through. We used to go on the stockbroking floor. I used to trade stocks on Delhi Stock Exchange floor. At that time, used to be the outcry system, and all my entire clothes used to get drenched in the summer heat, right from top to bottom. I had to change, in the dirty bathroom in office. But that was a part of the learning experience. I used to love the adrenaline, and my mindset at that time was, to make money, you need to come up with, you need to be in touch with very intelligent people, number one. And 2, you need very sophisticated strategies. And it is possible to find out these strategies and avenues. So there are some ideas and ways of trading or investing which nobody is thinking of, which, I can innovate and beat. So that was first 5-6 few years of my career. That would have been my frame of mind. But my frame of mind got busted within 2 years of joining. Guess what happened at that time in 1992? Many of us have watched the series. Harshad Mehta scam happened. And the markets came tumbling down. And that was like, it shook me up, because a business, I had started the investment banking business and the IPO and all of that. And within a few years of setting it up, we had to close it down. And that was a very important lesson I got early in life, that there is no free lunch, or there is no easy way of making money. And it's only now at 50, when I look back and introspect and reflect, that simplicity is the last of all attainments. Now I can say it very confidently, and I have, an elite group like you calling me to give a talk. But at that time, I was a young kid, insecure. I wanted to prove myself. So, just imagine the mindset. So it took me 7 or 8 years to shift to a mindset. And that time we were very influenced by the West. We have now, as a country, as our net worth has, country net worth has grown, our self-esteem, self-confidence has grown. Just imagine in, 70s, 80s, 90s, how much, influenced by the Western thinking we were. So here is a young boy, 27, 28-year-old. I go for my first conference to US, and I come across this term, financial planning. And guess what? That was a wake-up moment or moment of truth for me, because I had seen files in, marketing files, which my father had given me the first day I joined business, and I kind of virtually brushed it aside. So, it had these slogans: retire and prosper, invest in fixed deposits of companies. That's an instrument our company innovated for Oberoi Hotels of India. So, retire and prosper, invest for long term, make your children lakpati. This is a slogan we coined, and UTI kind of, borrowed it from us. And I hadn't paid it too much attention. And guess what? I go to US. There is a term called retirement planning. There's a term called children's future planning, children's education planning. So this whole mother subject was financial planning. That's when I decided, as Uma had shared in my profile, I want to bring financial planning profession to India. And that's what I went to. My colleague was going to US for his vacation, our CEO at that time. So I told Anil, why don't you go to stop by in Denver? You're flying from coast to coast. Stop by in Denver and meet CFP board and ask them if they want to come to India, and we'll help them. So we offered our office. So just like in 1940s, it's a big moment. In 1940s, accounting profession came to India. Similarly, Institute of Chartered Accountants was set up in ICAI was set up in late 1940s. A new profession started in India, and we played a small, humble role in getting the industry people together. I picked up the phone and called up, 30, 40 friends from the industry, and we all pooled in and started this profession. And I was grandfathered in as the first 25 amongst, other industry friends, first 25 certified financial planners in India. Now it has become a thriving, I believe there are more than 20,000 people studying to be financial planners, and there are more than close to 4,000 or 5,000 practicing CFPs in India. But more than that, whole financial planning thing has come to the fore. Now, what does it mean for you?
Hello.
And this is again a very, very important lesson. First was understand the importance of power of compounding. Now, second thing, very important thing, if you want to take away from today, is that if you can detach your mind and make your investment decisions not with the idea not just to make money, but to link it to your life goals. So you ask yourself this question: what are my goals in life? What is my life goal? And then link your investments to those life goals. So let's say you have a daughter who is 10 years of age today. So, and your family is prosperous, and education in US or UK is not a problem. You can fund it. But let's say, your gift to your daughter is not, now we are not in an era of dowries and all of that, and neither we should believe in it. But I think a good gift to give to your daughter, if I were your financial planner, I would ask you this question. I would say that, have you considered giving your daughter a startup corpus when she's 22, 23, and she's, gained experience? Would you consider giving her a corpus? So you have 12, 13 years to go and to build a corpus for your daughter where she does a startup. And this is how I thought about my sons. I have given an X corpus, which I've been saving for last 10 years. So whatever I'm telling you, I'm not giving you any gyan. I'm giving you only my own personal experiences. So for both my boys, I started investing a corpus when they were 7, 8 years old, and have been building up on it. Month on month, I was putting in an amount, and I said it will come to an X will become a Y amount, and this will be their corpus for startup. And I have told the guys now, guys, this is what I can give you. Rest is up to you. And I don't have any more money, and your mom and me have our own aspirations. We have to do our own retirement planning. Beyond this is you upon yourself. So, this is the sort of clarity, we need. But the fact that the underlying point here is the fact that I was investing this money for a particular purpose-based investing or goals-based investing. So this is the ikigai of money. Please understand that because I was investing for a particular purpose, I was able to have the patience and discipline and control of emotions not to be swayed by the market. Because markets have crashed 3 or 4 times. They have gone or up or down. I'm not bothered. So for me, all my investments today are linked to certain goals, which are 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years away if I live that long. And hence, I don't care, where the market goes. So there are times when, somebody came and told me, what, how do you feel the market has touched 60,000? So my answer is, oh, has it really? Because I'm not looking at stock market index on a day-to-day basis. My job is to run a wealth management business. My job is not to do wealth management myself. And my own wealth management, I'm doing in a very different way. Fill it, shut it, forget it. That sort of an approach. So whatever your goal is, buying a house, yacht, plane, retirement, whatever else, or it could be to start an old age home for certain people, something you believe in, some cause, some mission, some NGO. Put money away with that purpose, and then that will allow you a lot of discipline. Because another reason why people go wrong, besides tips, is when they invest based upon emotions, or they get swayed by emotions. So, for example, the wisest of my friends last year, when the market was 27-28,000 in March, and wisest friends, I'm telling you, they said, you know what, I've been reading a lot of international literature, UK, US, Europe, and I believe based upon metric A, B, C, D, E, F, again jargons, these are top fund managers. Again, on jargons, they say the market is going to come to 18,000. Such a determinant statement. And I said, I don't know. I learned, one principle, which is called the random walk theory of investments. Random walk theory, there's a book also by this name, that there are two types of investors in the market. 50% is who think they know, but they don't know. And balance 50% is who know they don't know. So which 50% you want to be? You think you know, but you don't know. And you know you don't know. So I choose to be, and my company chooses to be, the latter half. We don't know where the markets will go. We don't know what's going to happen into the global economies and all. But what we can do is we can have a strategy. So first strategy is to always invest based upon your goals. Second strategy is to not put all the eggs in one basket, and I'll build on that. And the final principle, which I was speaking of, is the principle of asset allocation. I would say this is the holy grail of investing. There is all of you who are academically inclined, and if you like to read white papers from US universities, college, and you have a finance qualification, there is a paper written by Wharton professors Brinson, Hood, and B. Bauer. It is called Determinants of Portfolio Return. What are the factors? It's like a 40-50 page report. 1992 it was done, but I would say it is the ultimate research in the principles of investing, particularly proving a point for asset allocation. So let me ask, I don't see Uma on screen. Uma, I want you to ask a question. Uma, what determines if you had to allocate 100 marks, how much marks would you give to the following three things? Uma, can you just do a sound check? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm very much here.
Okay. So Uma, the question for you is, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. So Uma, my question for you is, if you have to give 100 marks to amongst three things, what determines, the performance of your investment portfolio? Three things I'll tell you. You have to give it marks out of 100, and it should be total marks 100. So first is,
can I request everyone to keep yourselves on mute, please?
yes. So yes. Uma, the first point is market timing. So you have to allocate marks to market timing, how important it is. Second is selection of scheme. Which scheme you buy, which investment avenue you invest in, whether it is real estate, gold, bonds, or you buy mutual fund A, B, C, Templeton, or IDFC, or whatever. Third is asset allocation. How much you put in different asset classes. That means how much you put between stocks, gold, bond, real estate, art, how much you divide. Asset allocation, market timing, scheme selection. Uma, what is the importance of all three if you have to give it marks out of 100?
I think I'll go very safe, and then I look into mutual, almost 50% out of that 100 mutual funds. Maybe then I will go for allocation into stocks, real estate, and bonds.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Uma, I'm sorry, I didn't explain my question clearly. I gave you three criteria.
Oh, yeah.
You have to give marks between these three.
Oh, these three.
Market timing, importance wise. So Ritu Shah has put up Ritu has said market timing 20 out of 100, investment avenue choice 30, and 50% to asset allocation. So why don't others put it on the chat? Let's have Uma and others putting on the chat. That's more fun. What is more important? Asset allocation, market timing, or scheme selection? If you just give marks out of 100.
I think I'll go for asset allocation, more marks, maybe almost 50%.
50%, yes. So same as Ritu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So-
So similar as Ritu you're giving, and now
Then
Pooja
I
is
go
saying.
for market timing, maybe 30, and then I'll go for the.
Got it. So right. So you're close to Ritu. Pooja is also saying asset allocation 50%. Okay. So without too much quizzing and puzzle, the answer as per Brinson Hood B. Bauer research, and believe you me, I'm not trying to make you look good or bad here. And we have few more answers. So Radhika is saying 50 for asset allocation, 20 for market timing, 30 for investment selection. Sona is saying 50, 30, and 20 for market timing. So Sona is giving more importance to market timing, asset allocation 30. Fair point. Shubhra is saying 40% for investment avenue, 30 for market timing, and 30 for allocation. And Riddhi is saying 25, 50 for asset for investment selection, and timing is 25, allocation is 25. Sarika is given her answer. You guys can read it. And Barkha. So it is a lot of you are giving equal importance to all three factors, and maybe more to asset allocation. Barkha, Shobana. So guys, I was myself shocked. Okay, so this is lesson number, third important takeaway from this meeting. Brinson Hood B. Bauer research, when I read it, being in this line now, I had been for 7-8 years. It said 90% is asset allocation in terms of importance. What portfolio return you'll get over a lifetime? 90% is asset allocation, 5% is scheme selection, 5% is market timing. And guess what? When you discuss with your spouses tonight, partners tonight, just reflect with them. Ask them this quiz. Go and ask them this quiz. And, you'll be able to poke some fun at them. That will be, the good part of, this evening. Ask them the same question. Because all of us, we watch CNBC, different channels. We spend 90% time in trying to determine post-COVID, pre-COVID, what is the right time to buy. And then why do we watch these channels, read Economic Times? For this, which scheme to buy? 90% time goes there, only 10% in asset allocation. Whereas asset allocation is 90% important. So what you need to think of is how to do asset allocation. That is the most important thing. So now let me build on that example I gave you about market last year and my friend's conversation, who said it's 28,000, it will become 18,000. I said, bhai, hame to nahi pata. I don't know anything. He says, so what should I do? You give me your inputs. I said, if you have 100 rupees to invest over next 1 year, every quarter put 25, 25, 25, 25. Stagger your money into market. So this is the input I gave to my friend. And guess where the market is today? 60,000. So his average purchase price would have been around 40,000, and he would have made 50% return. Had he, bet negative on the market, gotten out, he would have lost an opportunity. And I'm not saying I'm right. It is the strategy which is right. So don't believe in what people say. Believe in the right strategy. What I'm sharing with you is only principles. And these are my own experiences. Other people can give you other principles. Invest, live your life, invest based upon principles, not about what people tell you. So this is a simple point. So how does asset allocation work? Let me give an example. If you had decided my asset allocation is 50-50, like what Uma was saying, 50% stocks, 50% bonds, 50-50. If you had at 30,000 index, you had put 50 rupees of your money in stocks, it would have been double today. So it would have become that 50 would have become 100. and your bonds would be 100. So your total 150 rupees portfolio has become, and 150 rupees, what have you decided? After every year, you have to rebalance. You have to rebalance your portfolio. So when you look at it in 2021, you will see that my stock portion of the portfolio is worth 65%, bonds is 35%. So what do? You take out 15 rupees from stocks and put it back into bonds. So this concept is very simple. It's called rebalancing. You simply keep rebalancing, and you have decided my asset allocation as an investor. Uma decides my asset allocation is stocks 40%, bonds 30%, art 10%, gold 5%, whatever you decide. That's a strategy you decide, and then you stick to it. So Pooja, I have 5 more minutes to wrap this up, and then we go into Q&A.
Yes, please.
Okay?
Go ahead. Even more also.
Okay. Yeah, because
Please
you told me
continue,
4:15.
Rajiv. Please continue. It's absolutely okay.
Okay. No, sure. Thank you, Pooja. So now, I'll get into, again, this is an evolution of thought. It's about, 10-15 years ago, I started thinking, I started getting into the psychology of money or spirituality of money. That what is our relationship with money? And my father would often make this statement: money is the moving force of God. And I re-express it with all humility. He says, in his own simplistic way, he says, Rajiv, we haven't seen God physically, but the physical manifestation of God is money, because money gets you recognition, respect, people. So it's if someone is not arrogant about their money, and they are humble, and they put it to good uses, and even at the recent Diwali Puja every year, the family Panditji reiterates the point. He says that Lakshmi hona is a blessing, and how do you use that blessing to the benefit of the society is what determines. And the more you give, you get it back with double velocity. That's the law of nature. So what is our relationship with money is a question I want to ask you. And because the wealthiest people sometimes are the unhappiest, and sometimes people with 10,000, the janitor who's opening doors for you in a 5-star hotel bathroom, or the door person, they are earning 10,000-15,000 rupees a month, but they are so happy. They have such a big smile on their face. So it is a question of attitude. What is your attitude towards money? And that is obviously a sub-statement of your attitude towards life. But money is a manifestation, of I have no qualms in saying that it actually determines how we are looked at by society. And that's why we as Indians, we are the only society in the world, probably besides Greeks, where we have a manifestation of God, in terms of money, and we pray. So it's a very beautiful culture. And I am guilty, of myself not going too deep into our scriptures. I have a superficial knowledge on this, but this is somewhere I want to spend more time researching going forward. Another thought I want to leave with you is that we spend so much time nurturing human relationships. Why not spend equal time nurturing our relationship with money? And I've seen, so many people have a broken relationship with money. They, have had a very difficult upbringing. They might have seen their parents' business crash, or some bankruptcy in the greater family. And that kind of, breaks our psychology on money. So it's almost like a mental well-being issue related to money. So you develop that hunger or greed, and, nothing is enough. And so we don't know where to apply brake, and where we cross the line of greed. So this is where, that's where, these stock market scams and global scams, dirty money, and all these shows we watch on Netflix. Why are the wealthiest people doing the worst of things? There's something we need to reflect on. So how can we be content? How can we be inspired by people who are janitors, and who are living a contented life? My I was so happy to speak to my chef, who's from Bihar, Dinesh Bhai. He was saying, I've got, sir, आप भी थोड़ा बहुत help कर देते हैं, but I have got 5 daughters married, so it's a great achievement for him. And now he's helping his son-in-law, who's in demolition drive, whose apartment got broken, in one of the cluster colonies. So they have pooled in as a community 11 lakh rupees to help him buy another place. So these are, I would say, this guy, he's never really complained. He would always come, sir, हमारे को इतना जरूरत है, आप कुछ कर सकते हैं तो कर दीजिए, otherwise we'll manage, so no, not pestering you. So this is, I believe, this person has a beautiful relationship with money, and I would be inspired by such people. So hence, my current quest and last 10 years, my study of Ikigai, and Ikigai is something, I want to leave more for Puja and Q&A part. I'm happy to answer any questions. I haven't really put it up as a part of my presentation, but my quest has been in the last 10 years, connecting the dots and connecting the dots between health, wealth, and longevity. So there came a time, when I became really attracted to study of human longevity. And I would again, try to peel off the label of my forehead. My inner voice used to say, "Arey bhai, tum to financial services ke person ho, time kyun waste kar rahe ho?" But I kept getting attracted. I went to Japan. I've been to Japan 10 times. In my friend circle, on my Instagram, everybody says, "Yeah, Japan junkie hai." I've been to Okinawa. I lived with centenarians, interviewed them, studied their life. Bajaj Capital has 2,000 clients over the age of 90. So we are, privileged as a 60-year-old company. So we interviewed 50 of these clients and understood their life, and what at 80, 90, 95, what makes them happy and satisfied. So we came up with 10 pillars of OmniLife. So maybe, Pooja, if you can put up OmniLife website, I'd like you to Google 10 pillars of OmniLife and just see it. theomnilife.com is what the URL is. And go and see it. And few of those OmniLife elements are Ikigai, financial wellness. These are very important of those 10. And my current, quest is bringing this integral connection between health, wealth, and longevity. And I want to, share with you a research and a story. UBS, which is the world's largest private bank, they did a research in 2019 April, and it was called the Centurion Club. So they interviewed 1,000 ultra high net worth clients. That means clients with minimum net worth of $100 million in 10 countries. And they asked them a few questions, fun questions. What is your goal in life? What is your number one goal in life? And guess what the answer was? To live healthy till 100 years. That was the answer that came out. What's your number one life goal? To live healthy to 100. Second question, very cheeky question, very fun question. What if, hypothetically, if you were granted 15 additional healthy years of life? So let's say you get to know in advance your lifespan is 75 and you can extend it to 90 healthy. How much of your $100 million wealth you are willing to give away? So guess what the answer was? 50 to 75% I'm willing to give away. 2/3 of my wealth I'm willing to give away. And psychologically, richer the person, the more he or she is willing to give away. So what does this mean? I want to leave you with this thought. What good is wealth? This is what my father KK says. What good is wealth if you are not able to enjoy it with good health? So there's a definitive link between health, wealth, and longevity. This is where Bajaj Capital is going. So we are not only selling health insurance now, we are also combining health improvement plans through OmniLife with it. This is what Shivam is working on, my younger son. And Jay is helping me build a digital retirement business, because we believe the segment of society which needs wealth planning the most is retirees, because they, again, father's quote that treat your clients' money. This is for our team members. We say, treat your clients' money like your retired father's savings, who's not in a position to earn again in life. So with that responsibility, we're building a digital retirement business. I'm fully invested. My family is fully invested. I hope I was able to add some value to you. And finally, leaving you with this thought that the ultimate principle is your money should outlast you and not the other way around. So I've been telling you all along, plan for the best, be prepared for the worst. We should all be prepared to go tomorrow, bye-bye to this world, but we should plan to live to 100. And one of the most, as a financial planner, I can tell you, one of the most irresponsible things we do as a financial planner is that when we fill that questionnaire, and the client also is a part of this guilt. There is a question on age expectancy. What do you expect your age to be? And most people say, "Arey, kuch bhi bhar do, 75, 80 likh do." And we've been guilty of doing this for so many years. Now that I look back and think about it, we should plan for 100, because the principle of wealth management is your money should live longer than you. You should not live. You have to leave a little legacy for your grandchildren. Your children will be self-sufficient, but for your grandchildren, as a gift from the grandparent. And so hence, our quest as a company, as a business, is that we are now progressing as a brand from our mission statement, from financial well-being over a lifetime to total well-being over a lifetime. So not only health insurance, but improving your health. And then not only helping you plan for retirement, but retiring till the age of 100. And then also helping you in turns using Ayurveda principles, applying modern science through OmniLife, helping you be healthy. And that's where the birth of OmniLife happened. And several 10 pillars of longevity, which includes food, movement, ikigai, and financial well-being, are a core part of it. Why don't you study it? And I'm very happy to answer questions. So I would love to stay in touch with all of you. And you can actually scan this barcode right now, and we can connect on Instagram. That's the most active. I'm not on LinkedIn, not very active. I'm active on Instagram. So, we can just stay in touch. Would love to be, connected with all of you through this platform. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Pooja.
Yes.
I am here to answer all questions. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. That was a fantastic session. And I will still have some questions. While we wait, everybody, please do put your questions in the chat box. To begin with, Rajiv, just wanted to understand, we did go through a period of uncertainty some time back because of COVID. So first I'll come to what, according to you, the concept of Ikigai effect for our lives during those uncertain times. What do you think we should take from Ikigai?
Yeah. So, Pooja, thank you for this question. Thank you first for all the compliments flowing in on the chat. It's very motivating for me. Thank you. I had a session with a platform called Mind Matters last Saturday. And this is the first time, again, I spoke on a subject which was Ikigai and mental well-being. Now, all of us, many of us are unfortunately physically damaged after getting COVID. And we are still trying to amble back to our normalcy. And it's a very tough life. And I feel really strongly for my, friends who have been through COVID. What we are not seeing, though, is the mental health challenges of COVID. Many of us are damaged. And I tell my friends that all of us have changed. Some screw, I say it in a lighter vein, dimag ka kuch screw hil gaya. But we don't know what we were, and we are not the same person. So we need to take time with ourselves and introspect and reflect. What have we become? I would say for most of us, I'll take a constructive approach. Most of us have improved for the better. We have, we want to have fewer friends. We want to believe in more meaningful relationships. Many people have decided to sell their businesses. Many people, I saw this the great resignation wave.
Yeah.
There is this WION channel documentary,
Yes.
which I saw by Palki Sharma last week,
Yeah.
which is that all over the world, people are resigning from their conventional jobs because they don't want to work the same way. I have already told my HR head that it's not, life is not going to be the same unless we give flexi work environment to people. They wouldn't want to work with you. One of my ex-executive assistants, a PhD gentleman, very intelligent guy, he called me on a health check few days ago, and I asked Himanshu, what are you up to? He said, sir, I'm following my Ikigai. So everybody now talks to me in terms of Ikigai. Kya kar raha hai tu? So he says, sir, I am living in the hills. He loves trekking. His Ikigai is trekking.
Right.
Sir, I'm living in the hills and I'm working for an MNC firm. And I work for 6 hours a day, and I have time every morning, before the European hours start. I can go up for my trails. So, people are now going for this new kind of life. So Pooja, I would say this is the time, not only physically, but mentally, we have all evolved, we have changed, and we need some little course correction. And hence, Ikigai is very important. This is the time to do things that are true. What is Ikigai? Ikigai is following your life purpose or doing things that are truly meaningful to you in every aspect of life.
Right.
This is the time we'll get greater satisfaction, because we have realized how life can come and go any minute. And this is what this phase has taught us. So I would say this is the time to really reflect on what is my ultimate life goal, what is my purpose. That is long term, but on a day-to-day basis, just find meaning in things we are doing.
Okay. Rajiv, to add to this, according to you, how can Ikigai turn a midlife crisis? That's where a lot of us are either reached or heading. So how can we turn a midlife crisis into an opportunity? Now, I want a blend of both health and wealth from you.
Yeah. So, midlife, all of us go through, a psychological term, international psychological term called midlife crisis.
Yes.
All of us go through that in our own way. If any of us believe we haven't been through it, either we are a saint or we haven't thought deeply about it.
Right.
So I had a very long midlife crisis, almost a decade. And right from 35 to 45, I was in that phase. But I came out a completely different person. So it was like, putting sugar cane at one corner, it comes out from the other side. I came completely squeezed out. And this gave birth to the current me, which is health, wealth, longevity, omni life, thinking more about life worth beyond net worth. And there's only so much of net worth, it matters. You are going to eat the same food, particularly in the South. Yeah, a friend of mine observed, which is the most egalitarian cuisine in the world. I said, no, I don't know. This is South Indian, because the richest person and the poorest person, they eat sambar and idli. So there is no class distinction in food. So therefore, I'd say that midlife crisis is a great opportunity to grow. It's a time to reflect again about what is important to me. So whenever another day, when we do a part 2, matrix returns of this, we can speak about Ikigai. In my Ikigai workshops, I give tools to people. I give them tools to find their Ikigai and follow up with it. I do talk sometimes, and I also do workshops, which is for smaller groups up to 20-25 people. So I'm very happy to come back and work with you guys there.
That would be fantastic. And otherwise, for now, we can join the sessions with you on the OmniLife.com. Yes. All right. A couple of questions.
Can I ask one question, Raju?
Yes, of course.
Is there anything equivalent to Ikigai in Hindu scriptures?
Absolutely, Uma. Our concept of dharma and swadharma is the same concept. And there's this lady on Instagram, if you look her up, Sahara Rose. She's finding your dharma. She's written a book. So it's almost like she's an Iranian girl who has written a Dummy's Guide to Ayurveda, and yeah, Deepak Chopra, kind of mentors her, and she's written a new book on finding your dharma, which is your ikigai in as per Hindu scriptures. So as Jay Shetty, a popular author, also says, he says, do not, look at class system with mistrust. He says there's a slight positive connotation also, that the roles were divided in society. That why don't you specialize in, role of a warrior, you specialize in role of a priest, and you do all the commercial works. So it was role divided, but it got, misused and abused. But the starting point was very honorable. And what Krishna, says, follow your dharma, and then swadharma, and swadharma, the concept of swadharma, Uma, again, my understanding on scriptures is very superficial, and I could learn from a lot from you guys. But my understanding is that it's all integrated. It says strive. You cannot improve alone by yourself. It is you in connection with your, immediate family, people around you. Unless your nucleus family is growing, if you're growing alone, you might grow out of the family. Then it is your greater family. Then it's your, community, your business community, people who you work with closely. They also have to grow. Only then your company business can thrive. And then the community, residential community you live in. So, this, the circle of life, this is what Richard Branson calls it. He uses it in his book, Losing My Virginity. And there's a circle of life. He says, start with yourself. Start by transforming yourself, working on yourself, self-understanding, and going on improving yourself, and then start expanding that circle. Uma.
I have one more question, Rajiv.
Yes.
Somewhere I read that you always encourage people working from home or working in flexi hours and all this. What do you think of the output or, the performance? I feel, personally, what I feel is, I know there are many advantages like, the carbon footprints and all, but being at one place, interaction, I think the performance will definitely increase this, what I feel. But, the present situation, now the times are changing, it is proving the other way around. Much before pandemic, I think you thought of, I think you implemented also, is what somewhere I read. So what do you say?
Yes, Uma, that's a very important point. I'm continuously thinking about it. I would say I don't have a definitive answer. But my current thought process is that people have changed after pandemic. And they want this. They want a flexi life. I'll tell you, my sons want a flexi workers. They are starting their career now. So I first kind of, pushed them that please come to office. Then I said, no, okay, 3 days in office, 2 days work from home. So this is what I have allowed them. So I'm practicing what I, sort of preach. And I believe, coming to office, when I came back to office after the Unlock 2, what I was able to achieve is that deep-rooted issues in people's mind, I was able to dig out. I think that's my role as their, colleague, senior colleague. You sit with person over a coffee and you kind of, drill it out. So let's say Pooja is my colleague, so Pooja, I'll sit with her and say, Pooja, bata do, tell me what's bothering you. And then Pooja will slowly open up and she'll tell me, Rajiv, you are a very demanding boss and I can't work with you. You have to not be as arrogant. So this can't come out over Zoom. So what we need to do is, there are many things which we are realizing, Uma, you will agree with me, we could do over Zoom, like this meeting. It would have been more fun in person, but it's not that we are achieving anything less. We have achieved at least 70-80% impact. And that saved a lot of time, ticket time. Otherwise, we coordinated this meeting in a matter of 6 days, 7 days. And you guys made time, I made time, it's happening. Otherwise, it would have been 6 months in making. That's inefficient. So there's so much more we can do international, so much fuel, so much, the pressure on environment is being reduced. The burden on the greenhouse gases, how much we are contributing by not traveling unnecessarily. I was going to Bombay once every week. Why? It's not needed. I haven't been for 1.5 years. It's not changed our life. So physical meetings have to be used for real things, of real connections, real bonding. Yes, that's where motivation comes from. So I would say the solution is hybrid, Uma.
Thank you.
So I'll just take a couple of questions here because come in. Sangeeta Verma asking, does investment in property ensure more growth or investment in mutual funds?
Asset allocation, Sangeeta. That's what it is. So no one, in fact, I'm glad you asked this question because it helps us reiterate the point. And Sangeeta, I'll give you now empirical evidence. I'll give you evidence for what I'm saying, because in financial world, nothing is just what people say are just opinions. Whenever your advisor says something, say, give me evidence, show me data, show me research to back this up. Because there is 100-year, 200-year research available in US global markets. Somebody says buy timber as a asset class. Say, okay, show me research, I will consider. Somebody says gold should be 5% of portfolio or 10%. If somebody says increase it to double, why? Give me evidence. So ask for evidence. So my evidence for you is as follows. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I saw this data point that real estate, number one investment asset class in the world in 2005, printed in the Economist magazine for last 25 years. So this is from 1980 to 2005. Which is the number one asset class in the world? Can anybody guess here? Sangeeta, if you can guess. Number one asset class in terms of returns. Sangeeta?
Sangeeta Verma, are you there?
Okay, so Sangeeta's possibly her mic is not open or she's not there. So number one asset class in the world. Would anybody else like to guess? Number one asset class in the world. Yes, Barkha, real estate. It is something to do with real estate. Real estate of which country? Anybody else? Gunjan, Ritu wants to guess? Radhika?
Growing economy.
No, growing economy, yes. But which asset class? Which country? Real estate. It was the number one asset class in the world.
At the moment, New Zealand looks nice because it's not.
Okay, Sangeeta is unable to mute. Sangeeta, why don't you write? Write in the chat. So you are saying Japan, Vandana. It was UK real estate was number one asset class in the world in year 2005. After that, they've gone through a 10-year of depression. And the return was 19.5% per annum for 25 years, over 25 years, and power of compounding. Pooja, again, I ask you. 72 divided by 20.
Don't do this to me. Not
Pooja is never going to invite me again anyway. So,
I'm going to mute myself.
Oh God. Yeah. So, every 3 years you have doubled your money. That is what 19.5% means approximately. And so 25 years UK property was number one. Guess which was number two asset class in the world? It was UK shares, UK share market. Yes, Sarita, India has been a very high performing market and it will be in future as well. And I'll tell you why. But India hadn't really, kicked off at that time. UK shares was the second highest performing asset class in the world for 25 years till 2005. And it gave a return of 19%. So it was very close. It was just like, so you would have made money in either. But more importantly, and please allow me to use like a jargon, you calculate risk in financial management by calculating standard deviation. So when standard deviation comes down, it means risk is reducing. So your portfolio risk is as important as your portfolio return or more important. So let's say you have invested 50% of your money in asset allocation, 50% in UK property, 50% in UK shares. Your average return would be 19.25%. But your portfolio standard deviation would be down to half. It's a very powerful point I'm making. Or in simple words, it means your portfolio risk is half because you are in two different asset classes. So that is the importance of diversification or asset allocation. And yes, many points are coming, Europe, India. So I want to answer another point. Somebody wrote about India. Who wrote about India being a... Sarita. So Sarita, I want to tell you, if you ask me a question, which is going to be over next 25 years, the top performing stock market in the world? If you ask me this question, I would say random walk theory. I am one of those who know I don't know. But I can give you a strategy. And this is again empirical evidence. I can give you an empirical evidence to support it, which is that my study is over my entire career, an emerging market economy gives you the stock market return is approximately double of the GDP growth of the country over long term. And what do you people ask, what is long term? Long term means more than 10 to 15 years. Because that is the time when your risk of negative return from stock market becomes virtually zero. That's a 12-year period. This is a Business World magazine had done this research. Beyond 12-year investment, your risk of negative return from equity is almost zero. So let's say I want to ask this question on this chat. What do you think will be India's GDP growth average over next 25 years? Why don't you write on the chat? So then you can, in a way, forecast India's stock market returns approximately. What do you think? If I ask you guys, what percentage? What is our current 8%? Hira is saying. Hira, yes, 8% is a good estimate. Once all the policies start firing, we've also touched nearing 10%. 7.5% Molly, yeah, absolutely. 12%. Vandana, Barkha 9.5. I'm taking an average. I'm asking you for average. So I am confident that India could have 12% growth years. But we will also have bad years. We'll also have 4%, 5% years. So over 25 years, is it fair to assume we could have a 7.5%, 7%, 7.5%? Fair? Put a thumbs up if you agree. Yeah. So if that is the case, multiply that by 2. That is the kind of return you may expect from the stock market. So I am giving you evidence, and these are all the, my experience of the past. It may change. It may become 80%. It may not be double, but it would still be close to this, because ultimately, when economy is growing, one of the biggest drivers is corporate earnings. And when earnings of companies are growing, in fact, corporate earnings are growing much faster, 15-20%. So when corporate earnings are growing, ultimately, let's say Reliance, I don't know how well Reliance will do for next 10 years. But if their earnings are growing 20% every year, ultimately, sooner or later, it has to reflect in their share price. On a day-to-day basis, the COVID situation, non-COVID situation, and there are thousands of global factors which affected US interest rates, Fed rates, UK, Bank of England rates. But on a long-term basis, only thing that affects the return from markets is the corporate earnings. And corporate earnings are a direct outcome of GDP. So I hope I have been able to, express this point clearly. Pooja, I know we are taking a lot of time of your members. I am to a vela.
Rajiv, one quick question, if I may.
Yes.
I want to ask you what Anil Kaur said very interestingly. She says, do you factor in bad luck in investing?
Bad luck. Oh God. Kali billi rasta kaat gayi. So I turn around when I see a black cat.
Okay.
So, all of us have our superstitions. And let's not hide behind the wall here. So it's a very honest, very bold question you have asked. It's a superstition. I have superstitions, and hence I would not say no for an answer. But do I have any evidence to prove? I don't have any evidence also. So this is my sort of unqualified answer.
Okay. So I think now that we're running out of time, hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So
Yes.
Now that we're running out of time, I would just ask everybody else that do follow OmniLife on their Instagram handle. And this is where you can continue asking your questions because we don't have that much time to ask all the questions. And so thank you, Rajiv. It has been a pleasure to have you. But first, I would now invite our flow chairperson, Uma Chigurupati, to present you with the memento virtually.
Oh, that's so amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju. Thank you so much. We will send it to your place. So that is one of the problem of not physical meeting. So you have to wait for a few more days to get the thing. Thank you so much, Raju. There is so much of take back home for our members. Many things like building the business brick by brick, and understanding of compounding and having life goals. Don't put all eggs in one basket. Everything is like with so much of you had described it so well. I'm sure all our members will agree with me. Thank you so much once again for your time.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma Pooja, for this opportunity. I want to thank. I'm sorry, I'm not able to open the chat and speak at the same time, but so many comments. So thank you very much for this wonderful response. It's very inspiring and motivational for me. Thanks for everyone who's participated. This shows me that you're engaged. You're not kind of cooking a sabji while listening to me, or scolding somebody in office, but you're actually engaged and listening in this virtual session. It's very inspiring for me. My bias is that I like to give people tools which they can work with themselves. So today, I've been able to give you primarily financial tools for your net worth. And I've reflected upon life worth. I'm very happy to come back if you want me for matrix returns and talk only about life worth and Ikigai. Very happy to do that, because then I'll give you tools for Ikigai, tools for finding your Ikigai. That's something we haven't done today. And Q&A, I'm sure many questions may be unanswered. I'm very happy to answer them one-on-one. So Pooja has already requested you, the OmniLife, where we keep posting all the good things about health and wellness, or my own handle, which I had put up, the QR code, but it's rajiv.bajaj. If you DM me on Instagram, I'm very happy to answer any of your follow-up questions. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Rajiv. Yes, I want to give heartfelt thanks for you to take out your valuable time out and giving us an insight on you spoke about the net worth to life worth. Yeah. It has been a privilege and honor to have you here as our esteemed speaker. Would like to tell those who are present here that Rajiv and Anu Bajaj, Anu is here and Shivam is also here. So welcome and thank you, Anu and Shivam, for taking time out. They have founded, or rather given birth to, this holistic wellness platform, as we know, OmniLife. And they do conduct a lot of these sessions, so do join in, and you can follow them on Instagram. And thank you, past chairs and members, for attending this extremely informative session. And I'm sure you've got some clarity in the direction to take forward to finding your net worth and your life worth, your life purpose. Thank you, team leading learning modules and IT team for the support. Once again, Rajiv, a big hug to you. And on this high, I would like to close this session wishing you all happy, healthy, and a purposeful life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.